protagonists are also 15 years old, so when I was first reading this, I was like, oh my god, they're so cool. And now I'm like, oh my god, they're so small. What is this? Hello friends, my name is Lauren and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing another book review for a series that I'm super excited to talk about. It is, as you know from the title, the Legend Trilogy. Technically, now a series. I'm guessing this is going to be a pretty longer review, so I'm going to put the timestamps down below in the description if you want to jump to certain parts in my video/review, or if you want to jump to the part where I talk about Rebel, it will also be down below in the description, so just check that out if you want to go to a certain part. Today we're talking about Legend by Maire Lu. This was actually one of my favorite books around 4 or 5 years ago. I have probably read it multiple times. I don't remember how many times just off the top of my head, but I definitely have not read this book within the last like 2 to 3 years. I just finished recently rereading it though, like in the last month, and I have to say I'm blown away with how good I thought this book was before and how good it still is now. I'm doing this book review in honor of the release of Rebel. If you're watching this video on the day it comes out, Rebel comes out in 2 days, so I'm doing it to celebrate the release of that book because this trilogy has been a favorite of mine for as long as I can remember, and even though I have not read it in like a long time, I'm still making my way through Prodigy and Champion to make these book reviews. But rereading Legend brought back so many old feelings and great memories and good times with characters, seeing the old plots and cute little scenes. Oh, it's so good. This book blew my expectations away. Spoiler alert. We're just gonna like jump right on into the review. So if you don't know what Legend is about, let me educate you real quick. So there's actually a updated description on the Indigo website, which I'm just gonna read. What was once the Western United States is now home to the Republic, a nation perpetually at war with its neighbors. Born into an elite family in one of the Republic's wealthiest districts, 15-year-old June is a prodigy being groomed for success in the Republic's highest military circles. Born into the slums, 15-year-old Day is the country's most wanted criminal, but his motives may not be as malicious as they seem. From very different worlds, June and Day have no reason to cross paths, until the day June's brother Mateus is murdered and Day becomes the prime suspect. Caught in the ultimate game of cat and mouse, Day is in a race for his family's survival, while June seeks to avenge Mateus' death. But in the shocking turn of events, the two uncover the truth of what really has brought them together and the sinister lengths their country will go to keep its secrets. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea of what Legend is, but in my own words, both the two protagonists in this book, it like switches point of view every chapter. We have June and we have Day. They're both 15 years old, however, while they're both very smart, they're on like completely different ends of the earth. I'll explain why. So June has lived in the like richer sectors her entire life. Her parents had great jobs. Her brother is like training for a top position. She's essentially just been born into like, you know, a privileged family living a relatively privileged life. And there's a trial, which is basically just a big test, and if you get like 100% on the trial, you essentially are like set for life. The better you do, the better your life is going to be though in this world. And June is like the only person that has ever scored 1500 out of 1500 on her test. And so because of that, she's like advanced past high school faster. She's getting amazing grades. She's able to like, if she breaks rules and stuff, she can get out of it. But she essentially has a great life planned out for her because of her trial score. And Day, on the other hand, essentially failed his trial. And so he has always lived in the slums, but every kid when they turn 10 takes the same trial, and he scored really badly. We don't know what his score is until later on in the book, but he failed it. He escaped the fate that was left for him, and now he essentially is the most wanted criminal in the Republic because of the things he does. He's not necessarily super evil, but he's the most wanted because he makes the Republic look bad. And so these two characters, while seemingly having completely different lives, are actually like super intertwined in the book. We'll talk about more as we go through this video, but basically they start to find out how their stories are connected, why they're connected, and what really the grand scheme of things is even in their whole country just by working together and all the stuff they find out. So I found this book a super interesting concept maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I read the book, and rereading it, I found it probably even better. It was really exciting for me to really like this book because I'm trying to be a more critical reader as of like 2019, and so obviously when I was at like 12 years old, 13 years old, I didn't really have like the same standard as I do now, even as I did last year. So finding a favorite of mine from like 5 years ago and enjoying it probably almost as much as I did back then is like incredible to me. So I don't know, I really liked it. I've kind of already jumped into the non-spoiler section, but for me, I really liked this book. My rating for this book is slightly undecided. I am debating between two ratings, either a 4 or 4.5. Honestly, when I finished this book, I left with the feelings of a 5-star book. I was like, this is perfect. However, thinking back of all the things that I read in the book, there was like one thing that kind of bugs me throughout the book, which we'll go into later, but I want to say 4.5. I want to say 4.5 because it was really close to just being absolutely perfect in like every single way. There was just one thing that really bugged me, and so that's why it's 1 of 5 stars. And like the reason I'm struggling a little bit to give it that 4.5 is because I read The Cruel Prince, and that was amazing, and that got a 4.5, but like this was also amazing for other reasons. I think my rating on this is a 4.5. Stay tuned to my Goodreads if you really want to know like what my brain actually thinks of this book later on, when I probably change it if I do. But I think as of this moment I am ranging between a 4 and 4.5, probably towards the 4.5, but like, will we know? I don't know. So I wrote some notes of what I originally thought when I finished the book, and point blank, this book is amazing. That's what I basically said. The fact that I could find a book from when I was 12 years old that I loved, and now that I'm 17, I still love just as much, I think it's pretty cool. The protagonists are also 15 years old, so when I was first reading this, I was like, oh my god, they're so cool. And now I'm like, oh my god, they're so small. What is this? Also, the fact that they're so awesome and they're 15 years old, it makes me feel like I'm 17. What do I have going on in my life? Maire Lu writes her 2 protagonists so well, and the way their stories intertwine from the beginning to the end. Okay, even before we start to understand why Day and June's stories are like important together, the way Maire Lu writes her books, or at least this book, is so well done. There'll be like a piece of information from Day's chapter, and then that same piece of information in June's chapter, but like in a different way. And so you start to realize that there's aspects of each of their lives that are connected somehow, and the way she writes it is so good. The foreshadowing and the development from the characters that we see is also really good. There's just so many small aspects that I think I missed like pinpointing out when I was like 12 years old. I left this book both satisfied and also like, I need the next book. Where's the book? Like, I need it. Because she is able to write like a great conclusion to the story, so if you do stop in this book, like, you know there's more story that's gonna happen, but like, you kind of have an ending, even though it like breaks your heart a bit. You have an ending. So there's that. This book had a great mix of characters and plots. I really liked it. The writing was good. The plots were good. I liked a lot of the characters. We had a lot of good character moments. And yeah, if you have any questions you want me to answer that are like non-spoiler related, feel free to comment them down below. I'll be happy to answer them. That's basically all I can think of for right now. But if you have seen a whole bunch of promo for the release of Rebel, make sure you read the series. Like, if you have any interest in like getting in on all the hype, this is the first book in the Trilogy Now series, and so I would highly recommend it, to be honest. It is your very typical futuristic dystopian classic love story, if you want to throw that in there as well. There definitely is a lot of hype around this book for a good reason. I do think it is really well done, but if you have any interest in reading it, it has my stamp of approval. I would recommend you read it. And now we're gonna get on into the full review of Legend by Maire Lu. If you have any interest in being spoiled, even though you haven't read the book, keep watching. If you have read the book and want to be not spoiled, I guess, because you've read the book already, keep watching. But if you don't want to be spoiled, stop now. This is your warning. We're gonna move on to spoilers. Yay. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let us talk in depth about Legend. Firstly, we're going to talk about writing in this book. Now, I already kind of said this in my non-spoiler section, but I absolutely love how the point of view of Day and June like intertwine almost immediately, but not in the way you would expect. So basically, there's always like a piece of evidence from like Day's chapter that shows up in June's chapter, or vice versa. And I really, really liked that, because you'd think these characters have like nothing to do with each other as they're so different. They're in different like social hierarchy things, classes, whatever. Day is a wanted criminal, June's like a prodigy of the Republic, but their stories are connected right from the beginning. A couple of examples I have are scaling the wall. Day is known for scaling like a 5-story building in like 6 seconds or something like that. And June like left school to try to do the same thing, even though like she's not allowed to, but she like low-key looks up to Day, and so she mentions that little incident about Day doing it and then her doing it, and so like their stories are connected that way. Then Day also references that same instance when he did that in like the next chapter. It was so good. We also have Matthias. Obviously, like one of the key plot points in this book is when Day hits his knife into Matthias's shoulder. However, we find out later on that it was hit in his heart. Day didn't do that, but we don't know that until later on. And so we kind of see a little bit of fight scene going down in Day's perspective, and then like the aftermath in June's perspective. And one other thing too is how in the sewers when Day was trying to like get away from Matthias and stuff. He was careful not to touch the sewer walls because he didn't want anyone to be able to track him or anything. And June, in the next chapter, when she went to like investigate a little bit, she knew that whoever did this was smart enough to not touch the sewer walls. And it's just small things like that that really elevate the story so much for me, because I was like, this is so smartly well done, and it makes me so happy to keep reading it and keep understanding why we're following these characters as opposed to other characters. And so, I don't know about you, but I love that. There were also some good foreshadowing moments that I don't think I would have caught if I had not read the book earlier and like slightly remembered a couple things from a couple years ago. On page 135, June is talking about Day when they were together. She says he'd stolen a case of bottles from a shop at Winter Sector's Edge earlier in the evening and sold all but this one for a grand total of 650 notes. It never ceases to amaze me how quickly he gets around in the sectors. His agility is on par with the top students at Drake. Basically, what she's saying in this chapter and like why it's important is that in the trial, there's like it's not all a written test. There's a written aspect, an oral aspect, a like physical aspect as well. And so they essentially test you in your like all well-roundedness, like if you're a good athlete, if you're smart, if you can talk well, all these different aspects. And she's noticing that his physical aspect is up to par with the top Drake students, which is like the top high school, I believe, in all of the Republic. And so that starts to make the reader question about if he's like so good at this stuff, why did he fail his test? And so it just gets your gears thinking a little bit. There's also other aspects of that kind of thing in the book as well, but that's a key example right there. There was also foreshadowing for Thomas killing Matthias, and I really liked it. And so on page 226, we actually find out that like how June's connecting the dots, and she says these black marks look like rifle grease, almost like the streak of grease that was on Thomas's forehead when I first saw him that night. And so also, in addition to that, not only is she starting to piece together clues, but she also learns that the pictures are taken from certain angles that is like unusual. They don't really get the full wound in the picture. Commander Johnson helps June plan Matthias's funeral, and she finds it a little bit strange because she doesn't normally do this, but she like accepts the help anyways because she figured like he's a valuable soldier or stuff like that. And so what that actually means though is that she's trying to cover up this murder as fast as possible, as the Republic did have a lot of things to do with it, and she doesn't want June to know because obviously if they found out the Republic killed her brother, that wouldn't like help their cause at all. That's basically all the little tidbits I have to say about writing. I really did enjoy the writing aspect in this book. It was simple, yet had a whole bunch of little details in there that elevated the story to just an extra good level that I really appreciated as a reader. I thought they were really good. Next, we're gonna jump onto world building. So originally I was just kind of thinking it's kind of like your typical futuristic dystopian setting, but they do have a little key differences that I want to point out. One thing that is a little kind of hilarious about this book is that they're on like an ongoing war a little bit, not fully, but like kind of. And so that means the resources are somewhat limited. And so that means that a lot of buildings, even like super high up official buildings, they don't have electricity running all the way through them. And so that was a little aspect to note, just like how the world impacts like how people live and stuff. But one thing I thought was absolutely hilarious was the fact that Jude wanted to look something up. And so this is her talking, and it says, "My brother has been dead for 120 hours. It already feels like forever. 70 hours ago, I gained clearance to search the internet, and I found out as much about Day as I could." She had to gain clearance to access the internet. I don't know why, but I find that absolutely hilarious. Like, you can kind of tell just from that one line that the Republic is not only limited on resources, but also controlling. In our world today, almost everyone has access to the internet because it's not like the internet is a limited resource, you know? And so technically, in the Republic, anyone could access the internet, but they want to control their citizens. So she had to like gain clearance to access the internet. And so I don't know, that just kind of gives you a little insight onto the Republic and how it all works. There's also the difference between the poor and rich sectors. As we know, June is from like the rich sector and Day is from like a poor sector. And so we can kind of see the difference of vaccines and medications. We see the difference of living conditions. We see the way officers treat the rich people versus the poor people. And so I thought that like social hierarchy aspect too like was an interesting component to the story. We also later learned that Thomas, I'll talk about him a little later, but he grew up in a poor sector but like worked his way up. I don't think everyone can do that, as we find out like Day tried to do that but like didn't really work for him. I just really liked the differences we saw between the like poorer sectors and the richer sectors. I thought it was a cool contrasting thing, as also too a large part of the story is when June is acting as she is a slum kid and has to like adjust to that too. So it just kind of added like this whole other different elements that just elevated the world and kind of gave you a more authentic sense of where you were and what you were reading about. Also, the trial. Now, the trial is one of the biggest parts of this book, and I count it in world building because without the trial, everything completely would be different in this world. And so in the Republic, once you turn 10 years old, you basically have to do this test, as I was talking about earlier. It goes to like your physical abilities, oral abilities, communication, written, a whole bunch of stuff like that. And so if you score like 100%, you're like crazy smart, you get like the best job ever, you have a great life. If you get like 90%, you're on like a pretty decent life. If you get like 80%, you have like a pretty good life. 70s, it's kind of like you're not gonna die, you have a somewhat okay life. But then anything like below that, you're basically just like sent off to labor camps or something like that, or you die, which is actually what it is. Essentially, once you're 10 years old, if you get a good trial score, even if you're from like a poor family, technically you should be able to work your way up. If you get like 90% on your trial exam, you should be able to like move up in the ranks, go to a better school for post-secondary education, get a good job, join the military, you'll have a good life. June got 100%, which is basically unheard of, and she has like a great life set out for her. She's like surpassed grades, she's like the youngest student in her school. She's essentially set up for a great life. Day, on the other hand, is said to have failed his test. They actually tried to kill him. They were gonna send him to a labor camp, but they ended up like, they just kill all those kids because they don't need them. They escaped. But that's essentially how his life would have worked, because he was considered to have failed his trial exam thing. And so that's another key aspect too about Day that we're gonna talk about later, about how that experience affected him. But basically every single person above the age of 10 has been impacted by the trial, how they did personally. And also, even if they were under 10, their family is essentially like, whatever their trial ranking was is gonna impact where that child lives now, and where they go to school, and like all that kind of stuff too. So every single person is kind of impacted by the trial in this world. And so that's why I count this in world building, because it is a huge part of how everyone lives. That is essentially all I want to say for world building. It definitely is your futuristic dystopian society. They've tried to like take over things, control their citizens, limit their resources, make sure like the best of the citizens have the best opportunities. But you can start to see as the book goes on that there's a whole lot of flaws in the system, and that the country actually covers a whole lot of its like more sinister things they have going on. Now we're gonna jump onto plot. The plot in this book I really enjoyed. We had like our main plot with June trying to figure out who killed her brother, and Day being the prime suspect, and then we also had a whole lot of other smaller plot elements within that, which I really liked. And so I found the balance between character and plot really good. As I said earlier a couple of times already, I loved the fact that there were pieces of information intertwined between Day and June's chapters and point of views, and that was one element that I really liked in the plot section. I thought it balanced out very well, and not only added the character element, but added plot within the characters, which I found really cool. I'm just gonna be looking at my notes for a hot second here. So we started off with a futuristic dystopian society, and basically we started off knowing that the Republic is super controlling and that there's a plague going around. The reason we know this is that because Tess and Day are watching Day's family as the plague control people are going to the houses. Basically, like, if you don't open your door within like 10 seconds, they kick it down, they're gonna be rough with you, and it's just overall not a good process. Essentially, the officers aren't very nice, especially to the people in the poor sectors. And they're also testing people for the plague, as apparently this is a huge problem all across the Republic. Which, like, that element in itself, the plague, is also like a subplot throughout the whole book, as like without the plague, so many things would not have happened. Eden plays a huge part in it, as Eden gets sick, as we find out with this like new plague. But then we find out that it was actually the Republic that sent that plague to them. Yeah, so then Day's house gets the strange X with the line through it, and like that triggers the whole bunch of other events as they try to say like the medicine for his brother, and then through that ends up killing Matthias, but like not killing him because Thomas did that. It's a whole thing. Everything's connected in this book, and I love it. I talked about the trial already. The trial is a huge part of it. I already said this, but Day hits Matthias's shoulder, which we actually find out he hits his heart, even though he didn't. But that's a huge part of the story, as that's when our two main characters' stories really start to become intertwined, as she thinks the murderer is Day, and Day believes it wasn't him, and it wasn't him. And so that kind of also just triggers a whole bunch of events of the whole story. So I mentioned this already, but Commander Jameson helps June plans Matthias' funeral, which is essentially just something to cover up the fact that the Republic did the murder. I don't know what you want to say. So then we start to learn that June believes that it is Day and asks Day to come to 10-second place. And so June is like low-key a fan of Day. We learn this throughout the novel. There's like certain times where she'll reference him, be like, oh my god, Day did this, I have to try this. Basically how he's so like incredible with his stunts, and he always gets away with everything, but but he doesn't kill anyone because he has like a high moral compass, I guess. And so you constantly see aspects of why Day is like a good person and like good athlete, good everything, but it's also weird that he failed his trial. So it's kind of always being foreshadowed in every single event. Nothing really happens between them. Day and June just kind of have like a simple interaction. June doesn't really get too much information on him, nor Day get any information on June. We start to uncover numbers. That's another thing. We have the numbers 318 and 2544. And so these numbers, as we learn later on, are essentially, I believe they're essentially targeting certain sectors where the certain cases of the plague are happening. So like they're just essentially tracking their efforts to like kill the citizens, I guess. It's been a couple weeks since I read this book, but I believe what it is that they're poisoning their own citizens so that way like their enemies will also be poisoned as well. I believe that's what it is, if I'm not mistaken. We start to uncover a couple numbers as it goes on. There's like a number by Day's house as Eden gets infected, and it's a whole big thing. We officially meet Day and June when June, Tess, and Day all go to the Fight Club thing. And so Tess gets brought in, which she shouldn't have, and June essentially like takes over for Tess and beats the crap out of that other girl on the stage, which was like a yes. Then essentially June, Day, and Tess like run off together. Day kind of takes like June in with them, even though like he's like skeptical of her a little bit, but he trusts her enough, and so they kind of work together. And then what I have here next is June and Day almost kiss, and then they do. And then June ruins Day's life. That's essentially like 100 pages, I'm sure, but like, it's okay. It's fine. The way June ruined Day's life is that she ended up catching him, visiting his family, and then used that information to like figure out that this is actually Day and this is who he cares about, so target who he cares about and he'll come out of hiding. And once she basically exposed him, they threatened to kill his mom, and then they did. And I read that and my heart was exploding. Literally exploding. It was so sad, okay? Imagine thinking your son is dead for like 5 years and then seeing him for like 1 minute all of a sudden and then dying. Like, kind of intense, you know, kind of intense. Then we start to uncover a whole lot of the secrets that Republic is hiding. So we learn that Day realizes that the plague is being given to people, not being caught by people at random, and so the Republic is kind of behind that all along. This is gonna be a funny moment we're gonna talk about later on, but Thomas tried to kiss June. June was not excited about that. And then we also learn that Day's trial score was faked, as June like can't believe someone of his smarts and everything that happened, like how he failed it, and so she looked into it and she actually found out that someone covered for him and he actually got like 100% on his trial. And so that means she's starting to like question why the Republic did that in the first place. June then starts to learn, thanks to Matthias, that something was going wrong with him and the parents. So the parents did not actually die like by accident. They started to figure out something about the Republic that the Republic didn't want them to know, and so the Republic killed them. Same thing with Matthias. Once he started to realize that certain things the Republic was doing, he was ended up killed as well. And so June starts to uncover this and realizes like Day was right all along, basically. I did find it a little bit too much that the fact that she found the website that Matthias used through like the spelling mistakes in his journals. Like, I don't know, that seems so extra. Like, what if he just made a mistake, you know? Like, I'm sure he's made a mistake at least by accident once in his whole life, you know? Also, didn't she have to gain clearance to the internet earlier in the book? So what's different now? Anywho, she learns that someone is covering for Matthias' death. We learn that Thomas did it, as I already said. June's plan is a little far-fetched, but I mean, okay. Let me read you this page that I'm talking about. On page 270, there's a plan to break Day out of the like place where he's being held by the Republic. So first things first, Day's brother John. I plan to help him escape tomorrow night, no earlier than 11 p.m., no later than 11:30. A fake death, a claim that John's infected with the plague. If I can help him escape from Batala Hall tomorrow night, I'll need you and a couple patriots to help him get out of the sector. Good. Now Day's obviously going to be trickier. His execution happens 2 evenings from now at exactly 6 p.m. 10 minutes before that, I'll be the first person leading him to the firing squad. And then she talks about this whole plan that's like super like out there, like it really ain't gonna work. Literally, the person in the book says, "You're suicidal. Do you know how impossible that sounds?" And she's like, "Yeah, but I don't really have much of a choice." And then she's like, "Okay, go on. What about the square?" And so then she's like, "Diversion." My eyes lock on hers. Create chaos in the square, as much chaos as you can manage. Enough chaos to force most of the soldiers guarding the back exits to enter the square and help contain the crowd, if only for a couple minutes. Blah, 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 blah. Some more planned stuff that's unrealistic. And then she says, "You think you're gonna be the only soldier escorting him to the firing squad? Other soldiers will probably flank you. Hell, a whole patrol might join you." I smile at her. There will be other soldiers, but who says they can't be patriots in disguise? Like, girl, this plan is so unrealistic. I can't. Like, I get it. You're like the prodigy of the Republic, but girl, you ain't that smart with this plan. This plan is so sketch, and it only worked because John sacrificed himself for Day. So that's basically how your plan works. Getting too heated over the fact that this fictional character's plan was too outrageous. But going back to this, Day is set to be executed. Long story short, he ain't executed, but John is like executed instead and takes Day's place. They're on the run from the Republic. What else can I say? I do like the fact that this book is very plot oriented, but also has like a huge impact on the characters, and you can see that in like every single aspect of the plot. So I loved the character to plot balance, and also the aspects of the plot just kept the story going, and I loved it. There was really never a dull moment, and you always just wanted to keep doing more and more and more. Everything kind of connected as we find through the story, and I loved it so much. And honestly, if you're looking for a good character plot combination, this is the book for you. We're talking about romance. Now, the main romance in this book is obviously going to be Day and June, and there was a couple moments in the book that just kind of made my heart like, oh my god. Like, you know that feeling, right? So we have page 137. So this is June's perspective, and she doesn't know that Day is Day yet. She just knows that like she's with them and stuff. So she says, we sit in silence for a moment. The boy speaks up. When he does, there's such a tender quality to his voice that I can't help looking up at him. I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, he begins. He doesn't blush, and his eyes don't dart away. Instead, I find myself staring into a pair of oceans. One perfect, the other blemished by that tiny ripple. You're very attractive. I've complimented on my appearance before, but never in his tone of voice. Of all the things he said, I don't know why this catches me off guard, but it startles me so much that without thinking, I blurt out, I could say the same about you. I pause, in case you didn't know. A slow grin spreads across his face. Oh, trust me. I know. What is that? Literally, what is this book? I love it so much. Oh my god. Also, we gotta talk about Day and his imperfections in his eye. I read this thing where it's like physical descriptions are important for your characters, but like there should be something in that physical description that actually matters to the story. The ripple in his eye is like tissue they took from Day after he like failed his trial, and so that's like a thing that has impacted him his whole life. Also, like his headaches, I think he has like a bad leg too from that as well, trying to escape. And so all those little tiny aspects just elevated his character to the story. I loved it. One more thing on page 230. So okay, this might just be me, but I love this part for 1 second. She's crying now. I give her a small smile, then sit up straighter and stretch my hand out towards her face. I wipe away the tears from under one of her eyes. After a moment, June takes my hand and holds it against her cheek. Her touch sends warmth coursing through me. She's so lovely. I ache to pull her to me now and press my lips against hers and wash away the sorrows in her eyes. Adorable, okay? I don't know. I like their romance. I thought it elevated the story too, rather than them just like working together and stuff. I don't know. I thought it was good. Now we're gonna jump on to characters, but specifically relationships. Our first relationship we are talking about is Day and his family. Now, even though John is the only person in Day's family that actually knows like he's alive and stuff, his relationship with his family is like mostly in his head. I really liked it. He cares a lot about them. He checks in on them as often as he can, gives them supplies when he can, and even though he's not a part of their life anymore, he still wants to be there with them and cares a whole lot about them. And I think that also ties back into like his trial score, and why he actually did get perfect is because he does have like a very high moral compass. He cares about people. He doesn't want to be the villain of the story, even though it's portrayed as though he is. He does really care about the people that have raised him and care about him and grew up having great memories with, and so I really like that about him and about his family, how they're always trying to like work together and make it all work, even though they're in a tough situation. So I don't know, not too much to say about them, but I did enjoy that. Day and Tess is a pure relationship, okay? We learned that when Day was 12 years old, after being on the streets for 2 years, he came across this girl that like needed help, basically, and so after a couple weeks they kind of started to work together. She told him her name, and they kind of were just like inseparable for like the next 3 years, and they worked well together. They understood like how they both worked and what they wanted to do, and I don't know, I liked their friendship. It was really pure. There was never a romantic moment between them. I liked just seeing them together. That brings us to another family aspect between June and Mateus. Now, we don't get a whole lot of things with June and her parents, but Mateus is able to tell June about their parents as he was like older when they were still alive, rather than June was a little bit younger, so so she doesn't really remember too much. But June always talks so highly of Mateus and how even though he wants to protect her as much as he can, he also wants to make sure that like she has a good life and all that kind of stuff. And so it makes sense that when she's devastated that he dies, she wants to get revenge on whoever did that to her brother. Overall, I did really like them, and I liked that she knew so much about him. Like, she knew about the spelling and the notebooks and stuff like that, and I don't know, I liked their relationship together. I like seeing them interact in the beginning of the story, and I wish we got to see more of them, but I definitely think some of the flashbacks we saw from June's perspective made up a little bit for that as well. And obviously we have the main relationship of the story, if you want to call it that, between Day and June. I love the fact that they kind of start off enemies to lovers. That's one of my favorite like romantic tropes and stuff. I just think it's so cool how you can see someone basically go from hating each other to loving each other regardless of the circumstances they're in. I find it so cool, and I absolutely loved it. I already kind of touched on them a little bit throughout this review already, but I don't know, I really liked them a lot. Characters themselves, I don't think I have too much more to say. A little bit about Day. Another physical aspect of Day, not physical technically, but the pendant Day wears around his neck that his dad gave to him a long time ago. The fact that he values his possessions so much, which also connects to the plot, which is really cool too. I don't know, I really liked him and his family aspects, and even the people he hurt, he never killed anyone. So he always had his motives in mind, but he also made sure everyone close to him was like well taken care of, whether it was his dad, keeping his dad's memory alive. He overall was just like a really good person, even though he's like the most wanted thief in the Republic because he makes them look bad, but he is a genuine good person. And so I don't know, I really liked reading about that, even though image of him is really negative. June is like the troublemaker but with good grades and stuff, and you kind of get away with what she wants, but as we see her throughout the story, she starts to learn that the Republic isn't everything she's ever hoped and dreamed of. They do a lot of sketchy things, and if things don't go their way, they just take that person out of the equation. So a lot of great development from her. I really liked that as well. Thomas was from the poor sectors, as I mentioned before, and Thomas was so jealous of Day for kissing June. Okay, this is gonna seem like a really insignificant part of the book, but it made me laugh so hard that I can't help not share it. This is on page 218, okay? This is like 2 pages long, but trust me, listen to this, it's worth it. It's such a good scene, okay? So this is when Day is being held for like his execution in his cell, but Thomas comes in to question him. Thomas is trying so hard to hold his composure. That will be all, Mr. Wing. Oh, come on, that's not all. I can tell you to give anything to take a swing at me. So do it. I dare you. His eyes have taken on a furious glow, but he still holds back. My orders were to ask you a series of questions, he says tightly. That's it. We're done here. Why? Are you afraid of me or something? Only brave enough to shoot people's mothers? Thomas narrows his eyes, then shrugs. She's just one less slumcon to deal with. I clench my fist and spit right in his face. Think you're a star, don't you? He says. Just because you pulled some pranks and played charity worker to some street some? Well, let me tell you a secret. I'm from a poor sector too, but I followed the rules. I worked my way up. I earned my country's respect. The rest of you people just sit around and complain and blame the state for your bad luck. A bunch of dirty, lazy cons. He punches me again. My head rocks back and I taste blood in my mouth. Miss Paris told me what you did to her on the streets. How dare you force yourself onto someone of her rank? Ah, here's what's really bothering him. I guess he found out about the kiss. I can't help grinning, even though my face screams in pain. It's so good. Okay. Oh, is that what's got you down? I've seen the way you look at her. You want her bad, yeah? Is that something you're also trying to earn your way up to? Try. That's... Hate to burst your bubble, but I didn't force her to do anything. A deep scarlet rage flashes across his face. She's looking forward to your execution, Mr. Wing. I can guarantee you that. I'd laugh. Sore loser, huh? Here, I'll make you feel better. I'll tell you all about what it's like. Hearing about it is the next best thing, isn't it? It's so good. It's so good. Oh my god, it's so good. I can't even begin to describe it. I think I've basically covered every single aspect of Legend that I want to talk about. I'll just do a quick concluding thoughts before I jump into some stuff about Rebel. But overall, what a good read. If that scene alone does not make the whole book, I don't know what does. I loved the writing. I essentially loved everything about the book. The only thing that kind of bugged me a little bit was the fact that June is really smart, but her plans are like kind of like too out there, you know? There's a couple things that were like too far-fetched for me, and so for that reason I think I didn't want to bring the book a little bit down, just because it was pushing the unrealistic part of this book. But overall, I essentially enjoyed everything else. I would reread it, I would recommend it, and if it sounds interesting to you, I would read it. So now that we have thoroughly talked about Legend. If you have any questions about it or want to talk, leave me a comment down below. But we're gonna jump on into Rebel now. So I'm gonna use my laptop for this, but I'll give you the synopsis of the book Rebel. Now, for those of you that don't know, Rebel is the official now last book in the Legend series, and it follows Day and Eden, I believe. Day, as we know from Legend, and Eden, which is Day's younger brother, who was originally the one that got infected with the plague. And so, technically, if you have not read Prodigy or Champion, you should not be watching this because you will be spoiled for things that happened in those books when I talk about Rebel. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, fast forward a bit. So, I'm going to read you the synopsis here just because I feel it does a really good job of describing what the book is about. Eden Wing has been living in his brother's shadows for years. Even though he's a top student at his academy in Ross City, Antarctica, and a brilliant inventor, most people only know him as Daniel Wing's younger brother. A decade ago, Daniel was known as Day, the boy from the streets who led a revolution that saved the Republic of America. But Day is no longer the same young man who was once a national hero. These days, he'd rather hide out from the world and leave his past behind. All that matters to him now is keeping Eden safe, even if that means giving up June, the great love of Daniel's life. As the two brothers struggle to accept who they've each become since their time in the Republic, Eden soon finds himself drawn so far into Ross City's dark side. Even his legendary brother can't save him. At least not on his own. So this book sounds amazing. I'm super excited to read it, and I want to see June and Day come back together and all that kind of stuff. If I'm not wrong, this is a huge spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to what I'm about to say. I'm pretty sure in the end of Champion, one of either June or Day loses their memory. I haven't reread it. I'm getting to it because I'm still on Prodigy. I believe it's Day forgets about June, if I'm correct, which kind of breaks the reader's heart a bit. I think that's what it is. But I'm hoping in this book, from that last line, you can kind of get a sense that June might come back into the story, which I really hope happens because they're great together. But I'm really excited about it. One thing I wanted to talk about was, if you follow like Maire Lu's releases, every single time basically she promotes a new book, she releases quotes on her Instagram story. And so I want to go through a couple of them because some of them really just made me super excited, okay? So we don't know who's talking, we can only see the quote, but I believe this is Day. Honestly, the memory is vague for me. Most of them are. I recall the fight, recall June teaching me how to space my footing and how to protect my chin, but I don't quite remember where we were or why. But I think it is Day that lost his memory, but his memories are like starting to come back, just not fully. And so I really want them to come together because they're so good together, and I just need to see them together. More romantic stuff between them. Give it all to me. Alright, so I believe this is Day talking about Eden. So behind his glasses, Eden's irises have their faint purple tint in the light, the color that never entirely faded since he recovered from the plague. It's my constant reminder of what it was like to almost lose him, what it could be again if I'm not careful. I used to break the law because I had to, I said coldly. What are you breaking it for? So I think we're gonna see a whole lot of like brotherly relationships between Day and Eden. Eden wanting to live his own life, but Day like wanting to protect him still no matter what. And so I'm really excited to see that, and so this quote kind of leads me to believe that we're going to be seeing a whole lot of stuff like that. This next quote, I'm not sure who's it by, but it is an important quote. It says, "But today, thankfully, there's something else to distract me. June's coming into town." Hopefully that's by Day, because I want Day and June to like, you know, get back together and stuff. And so if he remembers her and like that kind of thing, that's only good, you know? That's only a good thing. I think this is also Day, and it says, "A decade is a long time. What if we're too different now? What if we're just not meant to be?" That could be June too, and I really hope they are meant to be and get together because I love them. Oh, they're so good. They're so good together. I'm sorry, but they are. I want to know who this is talking about. It says, it's like a piece of dialogue, and it says, "Any plans with your elector tonight, or can I steal you for dinner?" I want to know who that is. I really want to know. It could be like Day to June. It could be Eden to someone else, because I feel like the elector position is gone, but I don't remember, to be honest. But like, I want them to get together. So that's all the quotes that I have from Maire Lu that I want to talk about. I'm so excited for this finale. I'm rereading Prodigy and Champion as we speak. I'm like a third way through Prodigy, and I hope to get through the 3 books in like the next week because I am really excited to read them and figure out how their story like officially ends. I am super excited that Maire Lu is opening back this world up. It is super exciting, and I honestly just can't wait. I want June and Day to end up together so bad, so bad, okay, because they're just so good together, okay? They're so good together. I love them, and they balance each other out. They work well together. They have like a strong past, as we've talked about Legend today, and honestly, I'm just so excited for Rebel. So again, same thing with Legend. If you want to talk about anything about Rebel, maybe include like a spoiler alert below, but if you want to talk about anything, hit me a comment down below. Let's discuss, let's talk, because I'm super excited about Rebel. I'm excited. I want to see all those little moments that we just talked about come true. I want there to be cute romance between Day and June. I'm sorry, but like, as much as I want to know about Eden and stuff, I wanna jump back into the world of Day and June. And so I'm wondering also if Eden's gonna have like a love interest, all that kind of stuff, or like what his story is gonna be about. Because if I remember correctly, we don't really learn that much about him, other than because it is mostly like Day and June's story. But now he's kind of getting like his own story as well. And so I don't know. I hope we get some good stuff. I hope we get some good stuff. That marks the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And like I already said, if you have any comments on this review about like Legend or Rebel, comment them down below and let's have a discussion and some good times. I'm super excited to reread the rest of the trilogy and also to read Rebel once it comes out. I'm gonna hopefully have a couple more reviews coming up on my channel in the next week or so, and so stay tuned for those if you want to hear more of my thoughts about the whole series. But as of right now, that is all I have to say. I will see you all very soon with a new video, so until then, bye.